Hello and welcome to episode 310 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Botzko, and today we talk about the 2-1 defeat away to Hoffenheim and whatever else we feel like ranting about. And for all that and more joins me Matthias Zug. Hello Matthias, how are you doing, and Merry Christmas.
Yes, a Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah and everything else that's going on around the world. Also to you, Stefan. So on a personal level, it's fantastic. On a sports level, I kind of want short-term amnesia just to forget this weekend even happened. How are you doing?
Yeah, same. I mean, I think people who listened to the last episode knew that I was already pretty much worked up about this game that happened on Friday, and I sort of saw it coming from a mile away because Dortmund just really were tired. I mean, it's not like Hoffenheim played great or anything. They were also pretty abject. And a team like Dortmund, the one that we saw maybe play against Mainz or Leipzig or whatever, would have easily steamrolled this Hoffenheim team. Without a doubt, Hoffenheim were terrible, and there is just no other reason for Dortmund's loss than maybe a little bit of stupidity, but mostly it's the tiredness, because I feel like the fatigue in the end really does affect your decision making in the box and in the final moments where you need precision the most. And so as I tweeted after the game, I squarely blamed this defeat on the DFL. Obviously, it's a little bit easy and simplistic, but here I am. It really annoyed me, this loss, because it was thoroughly avoidable. And I think there are one or two decisions by Lucien Favre that I would like to criticize, but also just the shot selection and whatnot. I think Favre himself criticized after the game, but you know, in the greater scheme of things, I still think it was quite unfair to Dortmund to play on a Friday, and not because Hoffenheim had the same amount of days to prepare for that game. That's not, it's just the accumulation of games you have as a Champions League group stage team, and that is just the accumulation of fatigue really that you get. And so it's always an advantage to the team that has not to play in Europe by definition, and especially if that game is also on the road. That means you have, when you play on Tuesday, you have the Wednesday to recuperate, and Thursday is already the day you travel. So it's just very, very tough to re-energize for such a game, and we saw it. Dortmund were still pretty dominant and had a lot of possession, and but the forcefulness, the counter pressing, and everything else that you've seen in recent games just wasn't there anymore, because this team was simply tired, and not having Marco Reus there also is a big bummer, because he helped with that counter pressing in a way that Mario Götze certainly couldn't. And I think we have to discuss the situation with Paco Alcácer, because he started on the bench once again. But Matthias, what were your thoughts overall from this 90 minutes of football, which then ended in horror and shock?
Well, like I tweeted after the game, sometimes the better team loses. That's unfortunate. It always frustrates me in sports. I don't think bad play or bad team should be rewarded. I agree with you that tiredness, fatigue, it was clearly evident, just because that final decision was poor. Not so much in defense. Obviously, losing Mats Hummels, that played a role. I think defensively it did. There was a little bit less stability when he was gone, which was great to see, in the sense of, the back three has really come together, because that was something we questioned a few weeks ago. But of course, it was unfortunate. Especially,
I think more unfortunate that you lose one substitution, like Guerrero, for example, for the front three or whatever, because I feel like that's what would have been needed more for Favre to add more attacking power.
Oh, I agree. It's, if Dortmund would have finished just 1 or 2 of their really good attacking moves that they had in the match. The situation that led to the 1-1 and the 1-2 never would have occurred, just because the game would have played out totally differently. Hakimi was great until he got to the final decision. Sancho's movement was great, but his passing was woeful on the day. It was just that little bit of inaccuracy at the end that really cost. You could tell that there was a lack of automatism with Götze in there versus Reus in there, also playing with Sancho and playing with Brandt, even though Brandt, I think, still played well. I think Weigl still played well. But it was just a little bit disjointed then, taking Hummels out and forcing the hand. I do agree that it was puzzling to me why Brun Larsen came in and not Paco Alcácer. I mean, at that point, Dortmund still had the lead. So maybe it was, hey, I just need a stronger body in there to hold up the ball a little bit more and that kind of thing. Even though, in my opinion, that's not really what the game was calling for at that point, because Dortmund were very comfortable. I mean, the first half was a stroll. It was boring. I mean, the commentators were on and on about, oh, such an engaging first half. And I'm like, really? This was boring. It was a yawn fest. I had to have another cup of coffee, just to stay awake. And Hoffenheim did not look like they were threatening Dortmund whatsoever.
No, they were waving the white flag basically for 80 minutes. This is what's so annoying. It's not like Hoffenheim tried hard to overpower Dortmund. They were just like, they looked content by being 1-0 down, like almost as if they knew if you bring on Kadrabek or Kramaric, I'm not sure even, they are more physical striker, that things would turn. So, but it's still annoying, like how easily Dortmund in the end were beaten by Hoffenheim, because Hoffenheim, they didn't really have much attacking flair whatsoever throughout the entire game. And then sort of 2 crosses into the box were enough to completely undo Dortmund. I think the first one was even more awkward because Piszczek sort of deflected it right in front of another player. And then, Dortmund just couldn't save it. Bürki was a bit awkward about it. So yeah, it's just quite annoying to lose the way Dortmund lost, and obviously even more annoying that it's at the hands of Hoffenheim, who are, as I said before, a team that I don't particularly like. So, which I feel like always raises the stakes of Dortmund losing. I don't know why.
Well, it just has that weird feeling. Maybe I should have trusted your gut instinct more than mine. But I mean, if seeing how the first half played out, I felt comfortable in my prediction. Dortmund had plenty of chances to go to be up 3-0. And, honestly, a second Dortmund goal in the game would have been done. It would have been over. It would have just been like, all right, can we just get to 90 minutes and go home for Christmas? Kind of a deal. Obviously that didn't happen. When, like you said, people say, well, Hoffenheim played on Tuesday as well, but they don't have the miles in the legs. I think this was the 25th competitive match that Dortmund has played since mid-August. So if you're looking at a span of 4 months, 25 games, that's a lot of games. And
yeah, you mustn't forget they just played against Leipzig, and a week before that they played against Slavia. So the midweek games that Dortmund played were for them like really high profile games where you have to really, bring your A game or you will be utterly punished for it. So, these weren't games like, the one game where they could just cruise at home was the 4-0 against Mainz, but otherwise it was Steine kloppen, as we say in German, where you had to work your butt off for every single win or not win.
Well, yeah, I mean, every opponent. I mean, even Düsseldorf didn't make life easy just because of how extremely compact and solid they were defensively until Dortmund figured out a way to break them down. And when Dortmund got the goal against Hoffenheim, I thought, okay, we're there. Hoffenheim played very passive, very compact for a while, and then when Dortmund got the goal, I was like, all right, it's going to be all good. But then the tiredness just came. I think you can make, aside from the substitution, specifically the Paco Alcácer, Brun Larsen substitution, where you can, I think, clearly question Favre, because lack of pressing or defensive work, that's a constant with, for instance, Jadon Sancho. I mean, there are plenty of times where he loses the ball and just walks around. Part of that is that's his player type. Part of that is tired, and part of it, I don't know what. So there must be some other disconnect there. Maybe fitness, maybe something else that we just obviously don't know. It seemed a little disjointed at times. With Brun Larsen in, it killed the team of any attacking flair in that moment. They still got forward. They still had opportunities, but it just wasn't the right personnel package. If you would put it in that term, it was the wrong line to send in if you were in hockey. So that's, it's not like Hoffenheim got a lot of tactical things right. I don't even know if Favre got a lot of tactical things wrong per se. It was just kind of one of those really annoying, funky games where it was just a bad day at the office for a variety of reasons. But I personally, I don't know how you feel about this. I wasn't like, we've had bad results or results that didn't go our way where I was pissed. I was pissed at the coaches. I was pissed at the players. I wasn't this time. I wasn't like, damn you, Favre and players. How could you do this to us? Not like, for instance, Paderborn. Like the first half against Paderborn, I lost my shit. This was definitely not that. This was frustrating. It was annoying for a variety of outside reasons. And match commentary reasons. The tiredness, you could just tell, you just see they were completely spent, and having certain players out injured, you could tell that affected things as far as the options that Favre really had.
Yeah, I mean, having to take Hazard off is quite annoying too, because he was one of the players that worked quite hard and had the work rate. So, that really shows what a downgrade it was to have number 12, 13 basically come on in Jakob Brun Larsen, and shows really that Michael Zorc has quite some work ahead of him, because if you want to win the league or anything, this quality of a player that Jakob Brun Larsen cannot be your next option up. If one of your wingers can't make it, that was quite embarrassing and ridiculous to be honest, because I mean, it's hard on Jakob Brun Larsen because he doesn't have a lot of playing time right now. But honestly, that was just such a nothing burger of a performance after, it's not like he's fatigued or anything, but it was just bad. And it's not like Jakob Brun Larsen has, a long history of really greatness. He had a good run at the beginning of the last season, but other than that, it's just a barrage of bad decision making, poor touches, and so I'm not really impressed by that, and I think his time at Dortmund is probably over unless Dortmund downgrade overall and lower to his level. But if Dortmund wants to have more ambition, you need another winger that can dribble much, much better. I think that's what Dortmund need to look at, and you just need to raise the quality a little bit. And I know the transition that Michael Zorc was trying to achieve isn't all that easy, but I'm sorry, Jakob Brun Larsen, but that's just not good enough at this level, and that was just a terrible 45 minutes where I didn't see any situation where I was even mildly impressed. So, yeah, I hate to say this, but here we are.
Yeah, I concur. He has VfB Stuttgart written all over him at this point. I mean, I say that kind of tongue in cheek. I was just thinking of Julian Schieber in that moment, but or any one of those types of teams. He's a good player. He's just not Dortmund good. He's not Champions League good. He's still really young, so he could still turn into that, but he needs more playing time to do that, and he's just not good enough to get that playing time at Dortmund. And I don't think Dortmund are willing to send him out on like a 2-season loan spell somewhere in the hopes of him developing, because they've already kind of done that. And like you said, we saw a good couple months last year at the beginning. And since then, not so much. I think that's where the disconnect is in terms of why didn't Guerrero then come in, or more importantly, honestly, Paco Alcácer would have been the right choice to bring in. You could, with your attacking three, kind of move things around. But as far as the winter transfers go, I think it's safe to say that a more out and out, robust, whatever you want to call it, striker will come. Who it is at this point, I don't know. I'm hopeful it's Erling Haaland. Is it necessarily going to be him? I don't know. If he hadn't gone to Leipzig, I would have been okay with Schick, but, obviously we decided against that in the summer. So, Emre Can, I'm saying, a lot, but Emre Can apparently is not going to be coming to Dortmund, which is more that midfield motor where right now we're a little thin. But once the winter break is done, Witsel will be back. And, so that's not an area of concern. It's really the striker that's a concern. I don't have any concern really at the wing-back positions and central defense and central midfield. I'm not overly concerned right now, but we're one Julian Brandt injury away from being concerned. Unless you...
very concerned.
Well, unless you go for a punt and say, okay, Tobias Raschel, let's see what you can do. But the season is so tight. It would be hard to justify that type of gamble, to be honest. So it's going to be an interesting month until the new season starts, or 4 weeks. It's not exactly a month, but it's roughly 4 weeks to see what can and will happen, because I think any transfers that do happen, they're going to do their best to make sure that they are done and ready to train with the team and ready to roll once the Rückrunde starts again.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly would have appreciated to see what Gio Reyna can do, but obviously I am not Michael Skibbo or anyone else in that department, so I'm not sure if he's already on that level yet, but I have more hopes for him as of now than in Jakob Brun-Larsen, but it's always hard to predict how these things pan out. However, it would have just been nice to see a new guy in there, but I still think you need to bring on Rafael Guerrero at some point in this game, and even if it just helps with the set pieces, because after Torgan Hazard went off, the set pieces were so. So yeah, I don't know. It's just an annoying game, and I don't want to talk about it too much because it would just annoy me to an end, and it just sucks that you go into the winter break with this result. And especially what's annoying overall is the fact that Dortmund spent 100 million in the last transfer window and have 4 points less than they had in the Rückrunde. Right now they have 30 points after 17 games. In last season's Rückrunde they had 34, and in last season's Hinrunde they had 42. So that is a downward trend that you do not want to have, and really shows that people, I think, should be allowed to be disappointed with Dortmund's season so far. I think 30 points is far below what everyone had hoped for and far below what Dortmund's ambitions really are, and just giving away basically 5 points in the last week certainly adds to that pain. But even if Dortmund had these 5 more points, I still think people would have had a right to be disappointed, because if you had 34 points in one half series and then spend 100 million, I think everyone expects an improvement, and we did not see that just from the points. And I have to say, Lucien Favre took he fumbled it for far too long in this season so far. He was at first a bit too conservative about his approach, plus the set piece malaise, and until he discovered the formula, just when he was almost out the door, that was a little too late. So yeah, it's annoying if you look back at this Hinrunde for now, because the league is definitely there for the taking. There's no team really running away with it. I mean, the highest score right now are Leipzig with 37 points, but as I just mentioned, in the last Hinrunde, Dortmund had 42 points, so that still would have been a 5-point margin had Dortmund just replicated what they did in the previous season. And obviously that was quite special, but when you invest that heavily, I think you can expect special. And Dortmund, I think, very much under-delivered, and I think that is okay for a lot of fans to be very frustrated and air their grievances and be disappointed. I'm right now not on the Favre out train, but I'm very ready to jump back on again if the second half of the season starts poorly again. So we'll see where it goes. But Matthias, I think 30 points after 17 games for this Dortmund team are quite mind-bogglingly bad.
I mean, I'm not as harsh as you in that take, because, they spent a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things, a lot of teams would have spent 100 million for one player. Dortmund brought in quite a few players for that. And you just have to recognize that there's a long bedding in period, because it's a new coach, it's a new city, it's a new team. I mean, even for Hummels, who came back, it was a new team. It was new defensive partners. I think when he left, he had Socrates next to him. So now he had younger, more playmaking type defenders to play with. So it's a different environment, obviously a different coach. So, yeah, I mean, it was frustrating that it took so long to kind of find the right formula, but that's the way it sometimes goes when you bring in a lot of new players. If I think of the marquee signings, if we just look at the 4 bigger name signings in Schulz, Hummels, Brandt, and Hazard, I think Hummels has performed about as expected. Yeah, he made some mistakes, but he's always had a couple of mistakes in him because he's a more risky player. But overall, he's been pretty good, more good than bad.
Let's put it this way: at the beginning of the season, he was the only consistent performer overall. It felt Marco Reus was in terrible form. Jadon Sancho had good numbers, but that was about it. And everyone else in the defensive backline sort of had a bit of a crisis, and there were a lot of injuries, so it was always rotating. And I feel like the only consistent man, at least at the start of the season, was Mats Hummels, and in the end, his form dipped a little.
I think also due to fatigue. I think that, he sees his age and his years. I mean, there are very few German players, I think, that have played as many games over the last 10 years as Mats Hummels. When you throw in domestic, international, and national team, all of that combined, he may be, 31 now? But 31 now isn't like 31 10 years ago. Athletically, there's so much more mileage on those tires, because also he started so young and so on and so forth. So I think that's part of it. Hazard, it took a long time for him to get going, but once he got going, he's been phenomenal. Julian Brandt took a long time, but he's now phenomenal, and it just took a while to find them. Nico Schulz is the one that for me is an interesting one, because ever since Favre switched to the 3-4-3 and he's been playing wing back, he's played like Nico Schulz at Hoffenheim. You can just see how much more comfortable he is. And he actually played decently in the last match as well, and it's so much better. It suits him. And so for me, I'm going to reserve my final judgment on Nico Schulz until we've seen the full season play out, because I think the 3-4-3 is now here to stay, as it should. And so then we can really see him in his natural environment versus kind of a fish out of water of what he was asked to do previously. That just didn't suit him. That was more Nico Schulz at Gladbach, whereas Nagelsmann transformed him at Hoffenheim into a very good, or at least a good Bundesliga wingback. And so the jury's still out there. There's no out and out flop transfer-wise. I think the flop for us all is, hey, you didn't bring in another striker. That's kind of the flop of the transfer policy, not the people that, there's no Andre Schürrle in there or anything like that where you go, oh, no, that was a lot of money flushed down the toilet. None of them fit that bill. I think they will all come good cohesively, and they really have over the last few weeks, you can even say so. So the winter break, it's here. Everybody can chill a little bit, hopefully bring in some depth and hopefully move out some dead wood and kind of ease a little bit of the financial pressure on the wage bill, and that frees some opportunities up. So, I mean, I don't necessarily have anything more to say about on the pitch with Hoffenheim. Do you?
Well, no. I mean, in that discussion, if I want to talk about flops, the only thing, well, not the only thing, but one of the things that really irks me the most in hindsight, and I feel like Favre probably feels the same, is why it took so long to consistently play Dan Axel Zagadou. I think that's, alongside with Julian Brandt on the 8, has been one of the biggest game changers for Dortmund, and it was all along right in front of our eyes, and a possibility you could have unrolled at any given moment, and it took for frickin' ever. And
sorry, go ahead.
No, I just think you could have tried that out a little bit sooner. That's all I'm trying to say, because things weren't already working for quite a time, and we could see Lucien Favre trying out a lot and throwing a lot of things against the wall to see what sticks. And I think he should have thrown Zagadou against the proverbial wall a little bit sooner. That's all.
I don't know if Lucien Favre could pick up Zagadou to throw him against the wall. It would have been funny to watch. No, I can. It's frustrating for us as fans, but I completely understand why. I mean, I was very critical because the total implosion against Bayern last spring was seared into my memory, and God knows it was seared into Favre's memory. And here's the thing we all can't forget. The decisions that he makes directly affect his livelihood. This is his job. So if he has doubt, serious doubt that a player can perform consistently and make the right decision consistently, then I understand why he would hesitate to do that. This isn't the game of Football Manager or FIFA where you plug it in. If it doesn't work, you lose a game, you move on. This is his livelihood. This is his job. And we all make decisions differently when our livelihood is on the line. So, let's not lose perspective of that. And I think what happened was happenstance and circumstance kind of forced Favre's hand into rolling out the 3-4-3. Rolling it out against Hertha, with everything that was going on. And then it clicked. Everything seemed to fall into place rather nicely. That's the way it sometimes happens. Sometimes Drew Bledsoe gets hurt running out of the sidelines, and after 2 games, and Tom Brady steps in, and the rest is history. Sometimes it just happens. And I think that's where I kind of attribute the Zagadou thing to, is just he's conservative nature. Lucien Favre is just his personality. He's a little more reserved. And when he relied on Zagadou a few times in the past, it bombed on him. It completely bombed. And so he was hesitant for 2 reasons to try it. 1, his job, and 2, the player, because he's a young player and you have to be very careful, because too many of those extreme implosions with a young player, they get conditioned to maybe even think that that's who they are. And you could completely destroy a career doing that. So I'm just happy things worked out as they are. I'm also happy of the fact that, yes, it's 7 points difference to the top at this stage in the season, but we still have 17 games left, and we know Favre knows the structure of the team, the tactical formation, everything that they want to move forward with, which they were still figuring out in the Hinrunde. So I think that puts a significantly better base on everything than 4 months ago at this point.
Well, I'm just going to announce it now. 2020 will be the Yellowwallpod revenge tour, where we will take revenge on all the fucking teams that dare to beat us or score late equalizer. I have not, as of today, given up hope on this Dortmund team. I still think they can challenge for the title, because, as we said, they figured things out along the way. I mean, it was a process. It took them long, and I feel like a lot of time and points were wasted, but and the odds aren't in Dortmund's favor right now. But that all being said, I still think that in the Rückrunde Dortmund have a chance to compete. I'm not sold on Bayern being playing the same Rückrunde they played last season, where they got 42 points even under Hansi Flick. And even though things quite, improved for them as well, quite dramatically so, but Bayern are not the team that will squirrel up the points as they once did under Kovac. I'm just not sure about that, and RB Leipzig might have their own little crisis, or just a couple of unfortunate points dropped here and there, and 7 points can be overturned quite quickly if you go on a winning streak. So it's just essential for Dortmund to really put their foot down at the start of the Rückrunde and basically come out hot with, 3-4 wins in a row, and then we'll see where we are. If that doesn't happen, then I'll be on riding the Favre out train again until it's left the station or has arrived or whatever. I don't even know where I'm going with this metaphor. But in the meantime, Matthias, you had a couple of things to say about Hoffenheim and Leipzig and all that bullshit.
Yeah, and it kind of so I mean, to kind of put context on everything. I've been obviously one of the many people that have been vocal about the 9 zu RB, that my severe distaste for the Red Bull system, not just in Germany, Austria as well. I have many Austrian friends, and they cry about it all the time. And Hoffenheim along the same lines, even though it's a little bit different. And I get asked a few times on Twitter, please explain why you don't like Leipzig. Because on the face of it, isn't it good that another team challenges in Germany? And I'm just not in the mood to explain it on Twitter through a string of 37 messages. Just Twitter isn't good for actual discussion. It's for ranting, hot takes, and bullshit. And during the English commentary that we got here on Fox in the US, I can't remember exactly who the play-by-play guy was. Color commentary was Lutz Pfannenstiel, which don't even get me started on that. Given his background and history with Hoffenheim. But they started talking about the wonderful fairy tale that is Hoffenheim. Snow White is a fucking fairy tale. Hoffenheim is not a fairy tale. Let's put that really clear.
All right, let's put a little asterisk on that word, because Germans have a very weird relationship to the word fairy tale.
Yeah, I mean but granted, this wasn't a German who called it a fairy tale. This was a native English speaker talking about the fairy tale, the wonderfulness of Hoffenheim from going up from regional obscurity as a small town village. They're actually a village. They do not have Stadtrechte, so they are not actually a incorporated city town in German law. They are considered a village. I think they're actually a part of Sinsheim. They're not even its own. Well, anyway. And coming up from regional obscurity, and they've been in the Bundesliga now for 10 years, and since 2008, how amazing that is. And stop it. I come from a smaller town in Germany, and it's great to have pride in your local community. Dietmar Hopp has a lot of pride in his local community. He is from Hoffenheim. He's one of the wealthiest, most successful business people in Germany. He also loves the sport, so I'll give that to him. He used to play for Hoffenheim when they played in the Bezirksliga or whatever. Cool, that's great. But him pumping millions, hundreds of millions, I don't know if he's pumped €1 billion into it yet, to artificially inflate this team, that's not a fairy tale. That's an open bank account and an unending checkbook. That is not the same. If you want to talk about fairy tales in German football, look at Freiburg and Christian Streich, what they have built. You can even look at the likes of Mainz or Augsburg, or if you drop in the Zweite Bundesliga, look at Holstein Kiel, Sandhausen, Heidenheim. Those are fairy tales if you want to talk about that kind of stuff. But it's not fairy tales because a fairy godmother showed up like in Hoffenheim. It's because they're busted their ass and they had the right vision and the right coaches to get them there. I mean, look how long Schmidt has been at Heidenheim, or Streich has now been at Freiburg. I think Freiburg in the last 25 years has had 4 managers. Finke, Sorg, Dutt, and Streich. I may be missing someone, but I don't think I am. So those are fairy tales. And I was already getting pissed about it. Anybody that follows me on Twitter already saw that. And then today on Twitter, I saw a high-profile German journalist promote his latest article from The Athletic, which I do not subscribe to, and talking about basically how great Leipzig are, and it could be worse in German football. Of course, it can always be worse. I mean, the plague could come back tomorrow. That would be worse. But it grates me that the amount of ass kissing that is happening now and whitewashing of what Red Bull system actually does to football culture, to regional identity clubs and fan culture is just so ignored. You know, I said it's Schönreden in German, which is like putting lipstick on a pig, and I don't want to insult pigs because they're actually kind of cute. And there's nothing cute about Red Bull. The one thing you can say about Hopp or Kind or Kühne or anybody like that, they actually care about the club. They actually care about the sport. Red Bull doesn't give a shit. That's not what this is about, okay? They have no identity with the club. They have no identity with the region. This was an easy meal ticket because they already had a big stadium ready waiting for them, and German football was like, here you go. And I'm not even talking about what they do with 50+1 and the destruction of fan culture, and people are just so blindly willing to follow that. But the two things people always talk about how great the RB is one, they play attractive football. I will give them that. They play nice football. That's where it stopped. The other thing they want to talk about is how great the recruitment is. Oh, it's so amazing. The scouting is just amazing. Shut up with that garbage. They are an absolute figurative plague on the footballing landscape wherever they plop down. They are the Walmarts of football systems. They go in Austria, they have destroyed the Austrian footballing landscape in the sense of the major talents. You're rarely going to see one come out of a club that's not Red Bull Salzburg, who then funnel it, oddly enough, 9 times out of 10, to Leipzig. So there's that destruction. And then Leipzig itself, people are like, oh, it's great for an East German club to do something. Yeah, I'm sorry, Red Bull Leipzig did not exist in East Germany. What they have done the ultimate rich man carpetbagging in East Germany. They've come into a region that has a huge football tradition. Leipzig and Dresden are 2 of the true birthplaces of German football if you go back over 100 years. And they've gone in and they've put down a big fat turd in it. And what they've essentially done is they suck all the talent out of that whole region. Michael Ballack came through at Chemnitz. You're not going to see a Michael Ballack come through at a Chemnitz. You're going to see him come through at Salzburg. And when people say, oh, they don't spend huge transfer sums, well, A, they kind of have the system rigged a little bit at Leipzig. So, you know, okay. Let's just move away from that one. They do spend horrendous sums of money, but not at the Messi, Ronaldo level. No, at the kid level. The amount of money that they offer kids to play in the Salzburg, I already said it. Well, yeah, Salzburg as well, but in the Red Bull system, no other club can compete with that at the region. And even clubs like Bayern and Dortmund don't do that. They don't pay that kind of level. That's why you see talented players come through clubs like VfL Bochum or 1860, who are right in the backyard of Dortmund and Bayern, because they have a completely different system on how the way they go about it. And Stefan, you had mentioned it while we were chatting before, that over the long term, Leipzig will be a dominant powerhouse financially in Germany because of the system that they have. Look at it in Brazil. What's going to happen there? They bought a team. I don't even know what it's called now anymore. I think they got promoted to the top tier, and they're going to completely destroy Brazilian football as we know it, because a lot of the traditional clubs are broke or corrupt or have financial issues. And this is the best way for poor young kids, who I am not blaming for this, to find a way out of the situation in a stable financial environment to go to Europe. But what it does, it completely destroys football culture and fan culture in a given environment. And I am so sick and tired of these mainstream media sycophants that are now sucking up to these clubs, calling Hoffenheim a fairy tale, and then the recent barrage of how great RB Leipzig is, or when people say, well, at least it's not Bayern. I'm sorry, I'd rather have Bayern win the Bundesliga for all eternity from here on out than to see RB Leipzig win one fucking title in Germany, because it shows just how decrepit the football system is becoming, and that we are losing something that in German we call a Kulturgut. It is part of our culture. It's part of our national psyche, is the sport. And destroying it, and destroying the regional local identity and fan culture in German football specifically, is, in my opinion, absolutely abhorrent, because it means more than just winning titles and bling and Instagram stories and all that other shit. It means so much more than that, especially in Germany. So anyway, I feel a lot better. So hopefully now nobody will ask me on Twitter again, so why don't you like Leipzig? And I like Leipzig. The city actually is kind of nice, but the club, ugh.
So why don't you like Leipzig?
So, Stefan, it's funny you should ask. No, and again, none of this has to do with the region or anything. Like, I've been accused of, oh, you don't like East Germans, you don't like Leipzig, or if I'm critical of PSG or Manchester City's club ownership, they're like, oh, you don't like people from, you don't like people from the Gulf region or anything. That is total bullshit. That has nothing to do with that. That has to do with that I could actually see beyond the money and, the great playing style.
It's just that Matthias doesn't like kleptocracy. That's what it is.
I don't even know what that is right now off the top of my head. Teach me.
Kleptocracy is basically rich people stealing money or enriching themselves. Yeah, basically.
That's right. Just like I don't like racism, but hey, people will still find a way to defend racists.
Anywho, this is a very jolly Christmas episode, obviously.
Well, I'm still laughing. I mean, it's not like that. I mean, I'm going to have a great Christmas regardless.
Yeah, that's good for you. Anyway, I don't know. Do you want to still talk about the couple of transfers that Dortmund may or may not?
Sure. Let's not end on a on a topic of those clubs. Let's end on other money.
Dortmund are trying to get rid of Jakob Brünn-Larsen and Weigl and Mario Götze probably, and Paco Alcácer they can't sell yet. So I think that all makes sort of sense. I don't know about you, but I mean, Julian Weigl right now is a bit of a difficult case because he's sort of the one replacement that Dortmund have for Axel Witsel in the system that Dortmund play right now. So it's a bit tricky. But I think in general it will probably suit Dortmund well to eventually sell him, because I still think his lack of pace is not helpful and not conducive to Dortmund's ambitions. So I still think that the Weigl era in Dortmund is coming to a close, but I'm not sure if it's supposed to be right now or in the summer. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, like you said, anybody could have seen a lot of those names. I would not recommend a Weigl transfer for the same reason you mentioned. At this point in time, Summer would make more sense. And like you said, his lack of pace is a massive issue. So that also gives a player like Tobias Raschel a little bit more time and kind of figure out who he is and what his future may be at Dortmund. So he's not one that I would like to see go. Brun Larsen, we already talked about. Dahoud, God knows I've talked about. So I'd be okay.
With Götze.
Yeah, that leaves us with Mario Götze. And Götze is a weird one for me, simply because I can see Dortmund not wanting him to leave on a free, because he's an asset that you could probably make 20, 30, 40 million off of. But at the same time, I don't understand, obviously, why he's not playing more. Maybe right now the issue is the fact that there's just such a great chemistry with Reus, Hazard, Sancho, and Brandt. But that also then begs the question of, what about Paco? What about if you bring in another striker? What does that do to everything? Do we just go back to a 4-2-3-1 and see what happens? So I can understand Götze's frustration. I can understand why he's not getting past the ones that are ahead of him in the pecking order. So as much as I would hate to see him go because he's so good, I could kind of see it from both parties as to why maybe not. But at the same time, Dortmund, I think, was very important for him to be able to get his fitness back. And obviously he has health issues that may be ongoing or not. But when he is on the pitch, he tends to always play well. It was a little disjointed against Hoffenheim, but I wouldn't put that all on Götze for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the real problem is that you have a massive asset with Mario Götze. He can perform on a world-class level for you, but in order for that to happen, he needs a certain setting. Like that's the one problem with Götze, I would say, that he can't just plug in any system, but he needs to have a certain position. And I mean, I was a long time advocate for him to play the role that Julian Brandt is doing now. And Lucien Favre just never cared to utilize him that way. And also Götze is, to me, he should either play as a number 8 or number 10, and both those positions have not happened for him, and he has played sort of as a false 9 type of player. And while this was pretty good for long stretches of last season, I still don't believe that this is his ideal and best position, and there are many reasons for why this shouldn't be the long-term solution. So it's kind of painful, but I think it hasn't happened now, and that probably means it won't happen going forward. I don't know what Mario Götze's plans are, to be honest, but I wouldn't be surprised if he leaves, especially if Dortmund say, okay, Mario, we need to free up something here on our wage bill for the striker, and I think maybe this is then that Mario Götze will probably leave, not as you said on like 20 or 30 million. I think it's going to be more like between, honestly, I think it's going to be between 5 and 15 million. I don't think there's a club out there that will really spend a lot of money for him. So yeah, that's right now my prediction. It's a little bit up in the air, but yeah, it's a sad part that Dortmund could never solve that issue, to be honest.
Yeah, it's going to be really weird seeing him play with Granit Xhaka at Hertha. It's a little jolting to the eye, but that is the most persistent rumor.
Not believing that one.
You don't think so? I mean, they have a sugar daddy now, so
yeah, I know, but I think that's just PR. That's not actual real Hertha talk. I just think they are just trying to big themselves up and to link them with prestigious names in order to, I don't know, get whatever ball rolling they want. But I don't actually think that Mario Götze will say, oh, well, look at Hertha and the great project they are having. That's where I want to go. I think Mario Götze should look for a team that still plays consistently in the Champions League. And just because it hasn't worked out at Dortmund doesn't mean he can work out at a different top-level team. So, especially because I think he always wanted to play abroad, and so I don't think he will switch to another Bundesliga team. I think if he leaves, it's probably going to be toward Italy or somewhere.
I was going to say Italy.
I think just ask his wife.
Yeah, I think Italy is probably the best bet. Also, given the pace of the game in Italy and given his fitness issues that he just has, that's just a fact. He has what he has, and I think Italy, a place like Roma or Napoli or something like that, I think could benefit him. I don't really.
It's also a football culture that would probably appreciate his talents more because of what he can do. And we talked a lot about the German football culture. If we often talk about the Italian football culture in terms of how racist they are, and I mean, racism is sadly embedded in every football culture because it's a reflection of society, and there is always racism in all societies. Hence, there are very sad realities, and Italy especially have a problem. But what we rarely mention, but people from Italy will know that, is that the discussion and the ductus or whatever, the way people talk about football in Italy is just on a higher level overall. So they just, discuss tactics on a much more sophisticated level than people do in Germany. So also the punditry is a little bit different there. So overall, in terms of that football culture, I really do think that Mario Götze will be appreciated more just because people in Italy, I would say, are a bit more, I don't know, have a higher grasp of football than they do in Germany. That's just my own opinion, but I'm just wishing him well, whatever happens next in his career.
Oh, and I echo that. I'm a fan of Italian football, and historically speaking, what Germany has kind of gone through in the last 10 years has been prevalent in Italy for about 50 years. So I think he's the type of playmaker that's still very much appreciated and enjoyed there. I would not recommend England because as someone
he's getting killed in the Premier League.
Well, he's going to get killed also off the pitch. I mean, look at what's happening to Özil. I think Özil should have moved to Italy when he was linked with Inter a few seasons ago, and I would recommend the same to Götze because I just don't think he will at this point in his career be appreciated there. I don't really know anywhere in France that would fit also financially, and then in Spain, I don't see him fitting with any of the top clubs. And once you get past the top 4 or 5, the drop off is pretty dramatic. So I agree with you that Italy is the most realistic place, and a place that if he leaves Dortmund, I actually wouldn't mind seeing him every week.
Yeah, it's probably going to be Milan. I mean, his wife.
Okay, never mind. Then I will not be happy.
So yeah. Anywho, I don't know. We can only speculate, and I would say the next episodes will also be there for speculation, unless Erling Haaland will be signed for Dortmund in the next couple of minutes, and we can discuss it quote unquote live. I don't know whether he will end up in Dortmund or Manchester United or whatever, but these seem to be the latest rumors. I still think it's likelier for him to join Dortmund, but with Mino Raiola, you never know. And I, for one, would have said, had Dortmund already wrapped up that deal, it would have already been announced at this point, because Dortmund get that stuff done quite quickly, especially if there were already meetings. This would have been done and dusted by now if it weren't still up in the air. So, Dortmund just need him quickly because the training camp starts on January 3rd. So you want to have him there and then start working. Anyway, so, that's all I have for now. I mean, we're almost in an hour. I don't see any point of talking more. I'm basically just trying to forget the Hoffenheim game. And so I'm glad we've already discussed that and can just move on to Christmas and happy times and, all that feel good stuff that we do, like watch Die Hard.
Exactly.
Anyway, so Matthias, thank you again for coming on, and thank you for that Leipzig rant.
But, you got to end the season or the year, the decade on a rant. I think that's only befitting.
Yes, after 30 points, it certainly is. Anyway, so Matthias, thank you for coming on, and everyone out there, thank you for listening. Not only this show, but I guess almost the entire decade. When does this start again?
2012. So not quite a decade, but it's been 7.5 wonderful years.
Exactly. So for everyone who has stuck by us for that many years, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And now Matthias will sing Christmas carols for the next 2 hours.
No. See, that was the Christmas episode with Matthew Gerard that is forever lost to the world.
Yeah, it's just sad because he unplugged his microphone and then plugged it in again, and while we could still hear him the entire time, his Audacity or whatever he was recording it with stopped recording. So all the Christmas carols were lost there. So that's too bad. But the older listeners will still remember the legend that is Matthew Gerard, and we will have him back at some point, I am sure.
Alrighty.
So, Matthias, how can people find you on Twitter if they want to ask you about why you're not liking Leipzig?
You can find me, as per usual, at Matthias Uck.
And you can find me at Stefan Butzko. And if you want to get in touch with all of us, please do that via Facebook or Twitter at Yellowwallpod. If you want to inquire about any other subjects, shoot us an email at yellowwallpod@gmail.com. And if you want to find our written content, go to theyellowwall.net, where you will also find all the means to subscribe to this podcast, which is iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, YouTube, and so on and so forth. So I don't have anything left to say other than everyone out there, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and Happy Holidays. Until next year, goodbye.